Hello and welcome to Byjus Exam Prep IAS. I welcome you all to today's session of the Hindu newspaper analysis. Before we go deeper into the newspaper today, an important reminder, I hope all of you by now are a part of our Byjus Exam Prep IAS Telegram channel. If you have still not joined it, please make sure to click on the link given in the description of the video and you can join the Telegram channel where you will get all the latest current affairs updates about the UPSC examination. Also, don't forget to join us tomorrow on our YouTube channel at 8 p.m. for this week's International Relations This Week. As you know, every Wednesday at 8 p.m. we discuss the most important news with respect to international relations of GS2. This week we'll be covering all the important news stories about what has been happening in Russia and Ukraine and India's reaction to the US giving an upgrade to the F-16 of Pakistan. Let's begin with the first article that is about the declining value of rupee in the Indian economy. The author here, Mr. D. Subbarao, is a former governor of the Reserve Bank of India and he says that there are some concerns that we need to look into because of the depreciating value of the Indian national rupee. The author here says that in the last 1 year, Indian rupee has depreciated by over 10%. And at the same time, the RBI's foreign exchange reserves have also come down considerably, that is by more than $100 billion. Now, there are two big reasons for that, and we have discussed this earlier as well. Unfortunate part is that both these reasons are somewhere out of the hands of the Indian government or the RBI, meaning that nothing that the Indian government can do would directly impact the situation globally. The first reason is the widening current account deficit. That is mainly because of the increasing crude oil prices ever since the Russia-Ukraine war had started. Now, the good part is in the past few weeks, the oil prices have come down slightly, but still they were at a very high level just a couple of months back. The second problem is that the US Federal Reserve is increasing its interest rate. Now, because of this second factor, not just India, most currencies around the world are actually depreciating as compared to the US dollar. The reason is very simple. In India, we have a lot of foreign investment. Let's assume some investor from the US has put all his money in the Indian market thinking that he or she will get good returns. All of a sudden, let's say the US Federal Reserve, that is their central bank, increases their interest rate. So they say that we will be offering you higher interest rate now for your money. So obviously all the American investors are taking out money from the Indian market and going back to the US to invest the money there. That is why there has been a decline in the supply of dollar in the Indian market, because of which the value of the rupee is further depreciating. The same is the case in most of the other economies as well, in developed and in developing economies, because of which the value of their currency also is declining. So both these things, that is the crude oil prices and the Federal Reserve increasing its rate of interest, is actually out of our hands. And in order to bring the situation under control, what the RBI has been doing is that they have been letting go of their dollars and they have been flowing it in the Indian market. But that has not been helping. In fact, that has decreased India's foreign exchange reserves by over $100 billion. The author says that the current account deficit is still a bit of a worry. Yes, the oil prices have come down slightly, but still our current account deficit is extremely high and is expected to go beyond 3% of the GDP, which is a limit set by the RBI. The fiscal deficit that we are facing in the country right now is also a big issue. In simple terms, the Indian government is spending much more than what it is earning. This is what the fiscal deficit numbers suggest. The fiscal deficit numbers were extremely high in 1991 also, when India had the balance of payment crisis. Now, he is not saying that the situation is as bad as it was in 1991, because in 1991 our foreign exchange reserves were extremely low. Now they are at a pretty healthy level even after the $100 billion decline. Also, as I said, India is not alone here. When the US Federal Reserve increased its rate of interest, the US capital from around the world will come out of their markets and go into the US, because US is by far the safest option for their investment. And that is why it's not just a worry for India but for the entire world. If you look at India's foreign exchange reserves right now as a proportion of its GDP, in March 2021 they were about 21%. Now they are about 17% of the expected GDP of this year. And if you compare this with 2013, because that was a year when most of the world was entering into a financial crisis. In 2013, it had reached below 15%. So, compared to 2013, we are still at a slightly better level, but we should not really wait for the levels to actually go down as much as they did in 2013, and some action needs to be taken. Now, apart from spending dollars in the Indian market, the RBI is doing something else as well. For example, the RBI recently announced that domestic traders to settle their import and export bills in rupees, wherein they won't have to spend the American dollars. Now, this was an effort to ensure that Indian rupee is accepted internationally by other nations as well. Although this is still a work in progress, but once it fully finalizes, it is expected that India will be able to pay Russia in Indian rupee only and not in US dollars. As a result of which, we might save up to $4 billion of foreign exchange reserves per month on our oil import. But again, this has to be implemented and it has not yet been implemented completely. The RBI is using its foreign exchange reserves, hoping that it will stabilize the price of the rupee. But in the long run, this is not the ideal solution. Because if the Federal Reserves of the US keeps on increasing its rate of interest and the foreign exchange reserves keep on declining in terms of India, the situation will not improve in the long run. So, as per the governor, for now the RBI is doing the right thing, but we cannot continue with the same approach in the coming years and we will have to find an alternative for that. Now, the RBI's foreign exchange reserves are declining week after week. The RBI is one of the most transparent organizations in the country and most of their data is available on their website. For your convenience, I am showing here the exact foreign exchange reserves that RBI has in the past 3 weeks of September. So RBI report on its website said that on 9th of September, this was a foreign exchange reserve that we had, about $550 billion. 1 week later, 16th of September, it was $545 billion. Then 23rd of September, it declined to $537 billion. So from 550 to $537 billion in just a matter of 2 weeks. This is just an indication of how the foreign exchange reserves are declining in India because the RBI is spending more and more dollars to try and stabilize the price of the Indian rupee in the market. This kind of a data is freely available on the RBI website and I would advise you to have a look at that and also make a note of the current numbers to be used in the examination. Now, there are a lot of different implications of the declining value of rupee. Yes, many people believe that it signals weakening of the economy, but that is not always the case. A declining rupee also benefits certain people. For example, if you are someone who is exporting their products from India to some foreign nation, especially a developed nation, then the exports from India will become more lucrative. Because earlier, by spending $1, a person used to buy lesser Indian goods. Now, by spending $1, more Indian goods can be bought. So, our Indian exports become much more lucrative. Also, if you're a freelancer who gets payment in dollars, then also it will be beneficial for you because that will also be helpful. If you're someone working in the US, sending money to India to your parents, to your friends, to your family members, that will also be beneficial for you because in the long run, you will actually exchange it in the Indian rupee and you will earn more money for that. So declining rupee is not always detrimental to the economy. For some people, it can be very, very helpful as well as the examples that we just discussed. The next article that we have here is about Tamil Nadu's Chief Minister's breakfast scheme, as we discussed earlier as well. As you know, the state government of Tamil Nadu has started a scheme in which the children will be given free breakfast in the government schools as well, under which the government schools will provide free breakfast to children apart from the midday meal scheme that has already been operational. Now, this comes in at a time when there's a large debate in the country over freebies versus welfare. The government of Tamil Nadu clarified that this kind of a scheme should not be categorized as freebie. This, in fact, is a responsibility of every government to ensure that children are healthy and children don't have to worry about their food when they are coming for education in the schools. The author here has written this article to try and assess the impact of this scheme in Tamil Nadu. He says that Article 38, which is a part of our dietary principles, says that the states have a responsibility to promote welfare and minimize inequalities in income as well as in facilities and opportunities among individuals and groups. Now, ever since our independence, state governments and the central government together have been spending a lot of money on many welfare schemes, be it Manrega, be it Anganwadi, be it the midday meal program, etc. But the fact remains that India still does not fare very well when it comes to standard of living, when it comes to nutrition amongst children. And there are multiple reasons for that. The schemes are not targeted enough. We don't have the proper delivery mechanism. There's a lot of corruption in between. Even though we have schemes such as midday meal, which tell exactly how much protein there should be in a meal, but it has not really been followed up properly. In this aspect, such kind of a scheme by the Tamil Nadu government is actually required. Considering the scale of India in terms of population, India's spending in human development welfare schemes is still extremely low. You can take an example of Tamil Nadu. As we discussed earlier as well, states such as Tamil Nadu and Kerala have always been very famous for their welfare schemes and for a proper delivery of these welfare schemes. Because of which, if you look at the comprehensive national nutrition survey, you will see that the numbers are actually in favor of Tamil Nadu. For example, in the state of Tamil Nadu, 10% of children between the age of 5 and 9 were stunted as compared to all India average of 22%. Similarly, if you talk about underweight children, the average in Tamil Nadu was again lower as compared to the national average. In terms of nutrition, micronutrient deficiency, in all these aspects, you will see the state of Tamil Nadu performing better as compared to the all India average. That is mainly because, irrespective of which are political parties in power, these kind of targeted welfare schemes have always run well in the states of Tamil Nadu and in the states of Kerala. Now, this particular scheme, that is the Chief Minister Breakfast Scheme, what impact does it have in the long run remains to be seen. But the one thing that many critics are pointing out towards is that we cannot assume that children coming to the school do not have breakfast at their home. There is no study that tells you how many children come to school without having breakfast. So, who is actually the targeted audience, that is still not clear. We discussed earlier as well how the state of Tamil Nadu has been the pioneer when it comes to these kind of welfare schemes. The midday meal scheme also, which is now a part of the entire country, actually started in Tamil Nadu. Although its history goes back to the pre-independence era, if you look at how it has originated after India's independence, multiple chief ministers in Tamil Nadu of different political parties have continued this scheme. Be it K. Kamraj from Congress, be it DMK's M. Karunanidhi, be it the AIADMK's Jayalalitha, all of these have continued these schemes in various forms. And the same is happening with M.K. Stalin being the chief minister. The good performance of Tamil Nadu can also be seen in the National Family Health Survey. When you talk about the states which have shown a great improvement in anemia numbers, you will see that Tamil Nadu performs very well as compared to the other states. They have been able to control the problem of anemia to a much larger extent as compared to the other states in the country. The next article that we have here is about the Mediation Bill of 2021. Now, the Mediation Bill was introduced in the Rajya Sabha last year, that is in December 2021, after which it was actually sent to the Parliamentary Standing Committee. Now, a few weeks back, the Parliamentary Standing Committee submitted its report and they have suggested certain changes to be introduced in the bill. Now, this bill has still not been passed after the recommendations given by the Parliamentary Committee. This article talks about the pros and cons of this bill. Now, let's try and understand what is mediation exactly. In simple terms, mediation means when two parties have a dispute, rather than going to the court, they should first try and mediate. They should first try and negotiate and come to a settlement before going to the court. This will have multiple implications. Number one, it will be more cost effective because going to the court means hiring lawyers. Their fee is not really affordable to most of the people. On the other hand, it's a long process. It has also led to the increasing number of pending cases in the Indian courts. Mediation, on the other hand, can be cost effective and it would also be much more time effective as well. That is why many nations across the world have laws about mediation. In India, on the other hand, there is no specific law about mediation, but mediation is mentioned in some other laws like the Code of Civil Procedure, the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, the Companies Act, etc. This law specifically wants to talk about mediation in the country, how will it happen, and which authority will be responsible for it. This bill wants to establish something called the Mediation Council of India to look into all the mediation issues in the country. Now, India is a signatory to the Singapore Convention on Mediation, which was earlier called the UN Convention on International Settlement Agreements resulting from mediation. Now, this doesn't mean that India is bound to have such a kind of a clause. But the reason why Indian government is also doing it is because this is also an international market. So internationally, when two companies or when two big organizations have cases against one another, they try and settle it with a mediation. Now, for such kind of a mediation, they look for a party which is neutral. They go to nations such as Singapore, etc., to have mediation. And this actually also increases the reputation of government of Singapore. This is where India wants to be a player in the international market as well. We want that our mediation mechanism becomes so transparent and neutral that people from outside the country also come here in India for mediation. This bill that has been introduced in the parliament aims to promote and facilitate mediation in the country. It says that mediation will be mandatory before litigation, means before going to the court, you first have to try for mediation compulsorily. The mediation process will be confidential. Whatever the outcome of the mediation process is, will be called the mediation settlement agreement. It will be enforceable and it will be registered in the legal authorities to have a force of law. Now, this committee that has been set up has raised multiple concerns about the bill. For example, they say that why are you making it mandatory for both the parties to go for mediation before going to the court? Maybe one party agrees to it and the other party does not. So let's not make it mandatory. Let's allow if both the parties agree, then they may come for mediation. Secondly, the clause 26 of the bill is also under a lot of debate. Clause 26 says that the rules for mediation will be framed by the High Court or the Supreme Court only. This also becomes problematic because if you are involving judiciary before litigation as well, if you're asking the judiciary only to make rules about mediation, then that defeats the entire purpose. You are then again giving the control in the hands of the judiciary. So clause 26 is also something that the committee wants to remove from the bill. The bill also says that international mediations, if they come to India, will be considered as domestic mediations, will be considered as a domestic Indian matter. Now, this is a problem. Why? Because the Singapore Convention, of which India is a party, does not apply to settlements which have the status of any national court judgment. So, when an international issue comes to India, if it is mediated, then it gets registered in our judiciary, then it will lose any international validity. And that is why we would have to change this clause as well as per the committee which has submitted its report. Now, I've already explained to you what is mediation. It is a type of an alternate dispute resolution called ADR because it gives an alternative to going to the court. It is a voluntary process, but if both the parties agree to start mediation, then whatever the outcome is actually binding on the two parties. It's a tried and trusted mechanism and it is very, very famous in developed nations, especially when they want to avoid going to the court to spend a lot of time. There are multiple types of alternative dispute resolutions. Mediation is just one of them. We also have arbitration, conciliation, negotiation, and collaborative law. So mediation is one of the many ways in which alternative dispute resolution actually can take place. Now, the Parliamentary Standing Committee has given other recommendations as well. They have also said that we should have a chairperson to head the Mediation Council of India. They said that Mediation Council should also be made at state levels as well and not just at the center government level. Then The Mediation Council said that each mediator, the person who is actually mediating between the two sides, should have a unique registration number as well, and their training should also happen on a regular basis. The committee also said that the time period that has been given to resolve the matter should be reduced from 180 days to 90 days. Also, if they are asking for an extension, extension should only be given for 60 more days instead of 180 more days to quicken the process even more. The next article that we have here is about the induction of Indian made twin engine light combat helicopter called Prachand. Prachand is officially a part of the Indian Air Force now. It is an indigenously built light combat helicopter, and thus it is a remarkable step in the Indian defense manufacturing. Now, this has been in the work for more than a decade now. Ever since India and Pakistan fought the Kargil War, there has been a need felt to have helicopters that are compatible to fight at very, very high altitudes. And since then, the work has been going on with the HAL, that is the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, working on this. This is a twin engine helicopter and it is in line with all the modern warfare necessity. It has been designed by HAL and was conceptualized after the 1999 Kargil conflict. The great part is, it is the only attack helicopter in the world which can land and take off at an altitude of 5,000 meter, thus making it very, very effective to have a combat even at the height of the Siachen glacier as well. It will be armed with a 20 mm nose gun, 70 mm rockets, and anti-tank missile called Dhruvastra. It has many other technologies. For example, it gives the option to the pilot to shoot by using helmet vision, meaning that the pilot can now shoot at the target just by looking at the target and not even setting any radar, because the helmets will actually be compatible with the weapon system and the helmets can decide what will be the direction of the weapon. Now, although this is one single bit of news, but the larger context is that in the past few years, defense production in India has increased considerably. For example, the forecast is that by 2025, defense production in India will be worth $25 billion, which is a huge improvement. In the past 3 years, India's defense exports also have touched the 10,000 crore INR mark, which is an improvement of 700% when it comes to Indian exports. This is still very low as compared to the developed nations such as France, Russia, China, US, etc. But still, considering the growth that the Indian defense production and export is showing, this is a very, very positive step in the long run. There are other steps also taken by the government of India to give a push to defense indigenization. For example, we have something called Innovation for Defense Excellence to empower more and more technology and co-innovation in the field of defense. Then we have the development of defense corridors in UP and Tamil Nadu and an increased budget given for R&D, especially for defense. We have a positive international list also, meaning the list of weapons which Indian government will not buy from outside India and it will be acquired from within the country itself. We have the Citizen portal which allows the vendors in the field of defense to get in touch with each other. FDI has also been relaxed and even the defense production and export promotion policy has been extremely supportive of Atmanirbhar Bharat Yojana in terms of defense. The next article that we have here is the announcement of the Nobel Prize in the field of medicine that has been given to the Swedish scientist Svante Pääbo. Now, Svante Pääbo is a very, very famous scientist. He and his team won the Nobel Prize for their discoveries on human evolution that provided an insight into how the human immune system works and how we are connected to our ancestors. Now, he is best known for developing new technique that has allowed us to trace back the genes of current day humans to the Neanderthals and the Denisovans. Now, interestingly, he found out that the gene structure of the humans today has something common with the Neanderthals and the Homo sapiens as well. There was a transfer of genes from one generation to the other generation. That is why how our immune system works and reacts to different types of diseases has a direct linkage to how the early humans reacted to such diseases. People outside Africa, in fact, have 1 to 2% of Neanderthal genes. He and his team, in fact, also managed to extract DNA from a tiny finger bone that was found in Siberia. That is what led to the discovery of a new species of ancient humans called the Denisovans. In fact, Denisovan genes have been found to have up to 6% of modern humans in Asia and Southeast Asia. Meaning that the modern humans outside Africa have 1 to 2% of the Neanderthal genes, and 6% of genes in the modern humans are in common with the Denisovans amongst the humans that are found in Asia and in Southeast Asia. Now, Denisovans, when they were found, were a lot in the news and they became a very, very important topic for the UPSC also. Denisovans, as I said, are considered as ancient cousins of the early men. They lived coexisting with the Neanderthals in the same region. Neanderthals were adapted to Western Eurasia, while Denisovans originated from Far East Asia. So they existed around the same time, thus that they belong to different regions. They were identified as separate species in 2010 when the discovery of a fragment of finger bone was made in Siberia. In 2019, another fossil was found in the Tibetan plateau, and the traces of Denisovan have been identified in multiple human beings living today in the region of Philippines and in some other parts of the world. The reason why the fossils of Denisovans are extremely important and famous is that their fossils are very rare because their population was much smaller than the Neanderthals. So getting fossils of Neanderthals is still common, but getting fossils of Denisovans is extremely uncommon, which is what he and his team achieved, and that is why he has been awarded the Nobel Prize in the field of medicine. These were the important articles from the Hindu newspaper today. Now a couple of practice questions. Number 1. How does a depreciating rupee impact the Indian economy in the long run? Assess pros and cons of such a decline in the value of rupee. Second, despite various government interventions, India still fares badly in terms of child health. What are the possible reasons behind this mismatch? Both these questions have to be answered within 250 words each. Thank you so much for watching the video. Have a good day ahead.